My name is Mac, 32 years old, and I never thought my success in tech would make me the punchline of every family joke. For years, I funded lavish vacations, paid tuitions, and covered mortgages, hoping to finally earn my family's respect. That Thanksgiving evening, as we finished dinner, my father casually laughed. "You've always been the family joke while planning the next trip I'd finance." Something broke inside me. I walked out, bought a mansion, and changed my life forever. Before I continue my story, drop a comment, letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to see more stories about standing up for yourself when those closest to you take advantage. I grew up in a cookie-cutter suburban house in Michigan, sandwiched between my older brother Kevin and younger sister Amanda. Our neighborhood was filled with identical two-story homes, manicured lawns, and families who spent weekends at Little League games and school events. My siblings thrived in this environment. Kevin excelled at football and basketball, bringing home trophies that filled the living room shelves. Amanda was the cheerleading captain, homecoming queen, and seemingly friends with everyone. My parents beamed with pride at their games and social events. Then there was me. From an early age, I gravitated toward books, puzzles, and eventually computers. While Kevin was throwing touchdown passes and Amanda was organizing school dances, I was taking apart our family desktop to see how it worked. I remember the Christmas when I was 12 and received my first programming book. While my siblings tore through piles of trendy clothes and sports equipment, I sat quietly marveling at the pages that would eventually shape my career. "Still playing with your computer games?" my dad would ask, ruffling my hair while barely glancing at the code I'd spent hours perfecting. My mom wasn't much different. "Mac, honey, maybe you should go outside and play with the neighborhood kids instead of sitting in your room all day," she'd suggest, concern etched across her face as if my interests were somehow unhealthy. Family dinners became a showcase for Kevin and Amanda's achievements. "Kevin scored 21 points in tonight's game," Dad would announce, raising his glass in a toast. "And Amanda's been nominated for Student Council President," Mom would add, her face glowing with pride. When they'd eventually turn to me with a obligatory, "So Mac, what's new with you?" my excited explanation about creating my first website or winning an online coding competition would be met with confused smiles and quick subject changes. The joke started in middle school. "Here comes the computer nerd," Kevin would announce when I entered a room. At family gatherings, relatives would ask if I had any real hobbies or if I was still playing on the computer all day. High school only amplified the divide. I joined the computer club and math team, finding friends who shared my interests, but at home I remained the odd one out. When I won the state mathematics competition, my certificate was placed on the refrigerator for exactly 3 days before being replaced by Amanda's prom queen photo, which stayed there for months. My parents attended every one of Kevin's football games, even traveling to away games that required overnight stays. They never missed Amanda's cheerleading competitions or school plays. But when I qualified for the National Programming Championship in Chicago, my mother simply said, "That's nice, honey. We can't make it that weekend because of Kevin's tournament, but we're proud of you." I went alone, won second place, and returned to a household where no one even asked how it went. The pattern was clear. Athletic and social achievements were valued. Academic and technical ones were tolerated at best, dismissed at worst. I became the family's reliable punchline. "Careful not to spill water on Mac, he might short-circuit," my dad would joke at dinner parties. "He speaks fluent computer but can barely talk to humans," my mom would add with an affectionate but dismissive laugh. I retreated further into my studies and coding projects, finding validation in the logical world of computers where effort translated directly into results. By senior year, I developed an inventory management system for a local business and earned enough to buy my own upgraded computer equipment. The owner of the business, Mr. Patterson, became the first adult who truly appreciated my skills. "You've got a real gift, Mac," he told me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "This system will save me thousands. Don't let anyone tell you these skills aren't valuable." His words sustained me through the last stretch of high school, where I graduated valedictorian to polite applause from my family, who seemed more excited about Kevin's football scholarship than my full academic ride to a prestigious tech university. The night before leaving for college, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. "Do you think Mac will be okay?" my mother asked. "He's so different from the other kids." "He'll probably find other computer people there," my dad replied. "Maybe he'll finally fit in somewhere. But honestly, I worry about his future. What kind of life can you build staring at a screen all day?" I quietly returned to my room, packed the last of my belongings, and silently promised myself that someday I would prove them wrong. Not just about my career prospects, but about my worth. Someday they would see me as more than just the family joke. College was the fresh start I desperately needed. At the University of California, Berkeley, I wasn't the odd one out anymore. Surrounded by peers who spoke my language both literally and figuratively, I thrived in the competitive computer science program. For the first time, my passion for coding and problem-solving wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated. My dorm room became a hub for late-night coding sessions and passionate debates about programming languages and algorithms. I formed genuine friendships with people who didn't see me as the computer guy but as Mac, a person with valuable insights and skills. My roommate Justin became my first true friend, someone who understood my jokes and appreciated my perspective. "You know what I love about you, Mac," Justin said one night after we'd solved a particularly challenging assignment. "You see solutions where everyone else sees problems." Those words stuck with me, providing a new lens through which to view myself. Maybe my family couldn't see my value, but here I mattered. My professors noticed my aptitude quickly. Dr. Raymond, my advanced algorithms professor, pulled me aside after class one day during sophomore year. "Your approach to the clustering algorithm assignment was innovative," he said. "Have you considered applying for the summer internship program at Innotech?" With his recommendation, I landed my first internship at a Silicon Valley startup. The experience was transformative. Working alongside industry professionals who treated my ideas with respect, I began to shed the insecurities that had been instilled in me throughout childhood. The summer ended with a job offer for part-time work during the school year and a guaranteed position upon graduation. I called home eager to share the news. "That's nice, honey," my mother said after a brief congratulation. "Did you hear Kevin made assistant coach at his alma mater? We're so proud. Oh, and Amanda is engaged to that doctor she's been dating." The familiar sting of dismissal returned, but it didn't cut quite as deeply as before. I had found my path with or without their validation. I graduated summa cum laude, walking across the stage to receive my diploma while scanning the audience. My parents and siblings had made the trip, sitting politely in the crowd, clapping at appropriate moments. They took me to dinner afterward, where Kevin dominated the conversation with stories about his coaching position, and Amanda showed off her engagement ring. "So you'll be working at that internet company?" my father asked, finally acknowledging my future. "It's a tech startup focused on cloud security solutions," I explained. "The starting salary is 6 figures and there's significant growth potential." 6 figures for typing on a keyboard, my dad chuckled, shaking his head. "What a world we live in." The comment stung, but I smiled and changed the subject. Their approval no longer seemed like the prize it once was. My career accelerated faster than even I had anticipated. The startup Secure Cloud was developing revolutionary encryption technology, and my contributions quickly earned me a promotion to lead developer within 2 years. When a tech giant acquired us for $300 million 3 years after I joined, my stock options suddenly made me a millionaire at 27. The acquisition made local business news, but I didn't share the details with my family. Instead, I purchased a modest 3-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood, invested most of my windfall, and continued living relatively frugally. My new position at the acquiring company came with an even more substantial salary and additional stock options. Financial security, something I'd never experienced growing up in our sometimes struggling middle-class household, became my new reality. The first time I helped my family financially happened almost by accident. During a phone call with my mother, she mentioned that their refrigerator had broken down and they were trying to save for a replacement. "I can help with that," I offered impulsively. "Let me send you some money." The gratitude in her voice when I transferred $5,000 to their account gave me a warm feeling I'd rarely experienced from my family. For the first time, I felt truly valuable to them. That opened the floodgates. Soon my brother Kevin called about trouble making his car payment after unexpected medical bills for his son. My sister Amanda needed help with the down payment on a house. My parents' roof needed replacing. Each time I helped, the initial gratitude was effusive, but it quickly transformed into expectation. The thank you texts became shorter, the requests became more frequent. Still, I continued to help, holding on to the hope that my financial contributions would finally earn me the respect I'd always craved. At family gatherings, however, the dynamic remained unchanged. "Here comes the walking ATM." Kevin would joke when I arrived. "Make sure to ask him for his Wi-Fi password." Before asking for a loan, Amanda would add, generating laughter around the room. My financial success became yet another punchline, another way I was different, another reason I wasn't quite part of the inner circle. The joke had evolved, but I remained its target. Still, I persisted in my generosity, convincing myself that someday they would really see me for who I was. Someday the jokes would stop and the appreciation would remain. Someday I would finally belong. 3 years into my new position as senior developer, I received another substantial promotion. The company recognized my contributions to several key projects and appointed me as Director of Security Innovation, complete with a corner office, a team of 15 developers under my supervision, and a salary that nearly doubled my already comfortable income. The day I received the news, I sat alone in my new office, staring out at the San Francisco skyline, wishing I had someone to truly share the moment with. I called my parents that evening. "Mom, I got a major promotion today," I said, trying to keep the childlike hope out of my voice. "That's wonderful, honey," she replied. And for a moment, I thought she might actually ask for details. Instead, she continued, "Listen, I'm glad you called. Your sister is going through a terrible time." James left her for his secretary. "Can you believe it? After 8 years of marriage, she's devastated, and now she's worried about keeping your nephew in his private school. The tuition is due next month, and with the divorce proceedings." The implication was clear. Without hesitation, I offered to cover Tyler's tuition. "Send me the details and I'll take care of it," I said, swallowing my disappointment. "You're such a good brother," my mother gushed. "I don't know what we'd do without you." What started as a one-time assistance for my nephew's education turned into a regular commitment, $30,000 annually, for the best education for Tyler. Amanda never directly thanked me after the initial arrangement was made. Instead, she would occasionally send photos of Tyler in his school uniform with captions like, "Thriving thanks to Uncle Mac's computer money." 2 months later, Kevin called in a panic. He'd been laid off from his coaching position due to budget cuts, and with 3 months of mortgage payments already missed, the bank was threatening foreclosure. "I can't let my kids lose their home, Mac," he said, his voice breaking. "I've never asked you for anything this big before, but I'm desperate." I agreed to cover his mortgage payments until he found new employment, which stretched from the promised couple of months into an entire year. $22,000 that was never acknowledged again once the crisis had passed. Then came my parents' retirement crisis. Dad had always planned to retire at 62, but their investment portfolio had taken a devastating hit during the market downturn. During a weekend visit, I found them at the kitchen table surrounded by financial statements, my mother wiping away tears. "We'll have to sell the house," my father was saying. "There's no other way to make ends meet." The house where I'd grown up, where I'd experienced both painful exclusion and formative moments, was about to be lost. Despite the complicated emotions attached to that place, I couldn't let it happen. "Let me see your monthly expenses," I said, sitting down at the table. After reviewing their situation, I set up an automatic monthly transfer of $4,000 into their account, enough to cover the shortfall between their reduced retirement income and their expenses, with a little extra for comfort. "This is temporary," my father insisted, his pride clearly wounded. "Just until the market recovers." We both knew it wasn't temporary, but maintaining the fiction helped him accept the help. The monthly transfers continued without further discussion, becoming just another financial obligation I fulfilled, without expectation of recognition. Word of my financial stability spread through the extended family. Cousin Patrick needed seed money for his landscaping business. Aunt Cheryl's daughter wanted to study abroad. Uncle William's roof collapsed during a severe storm. One by one, family members who had barely spoken to me at gatherings approached with carefully constructed stories of need, and one by one, I helped them, telling myself each time that family supports family. The real shift came during a casual Sunday dinner at my parents' house. Amanda mentioned that she and her son hadn't had a proper vacation since the divorce. "Tyler's never even seen the ocean," she sighed dramatically. "But on a teacher's salary beach, vacations aren't exactly in the budget." "We haven't had a real family trip in years," my mother added wistfully. "Remember when we used to go camping by the lake every summer?" I remembered those trips vividly, Kevin and Dad fishing and hiking while Mom and Amanda sunbathed and swam. I'd usually end up alone reading under a tree after being teased for my inability to bait a hook properly or my reluctance to jump off the dock into the murky water. "What if we all went somewhere together?" I suggested, immediately regretting the words even as they left my mouth. I could arrange something. The instant transformation in their expressions was remarkable. Suddenly, I had everyone's full attention. Plans were enthusiastically discussed. Suggestions flew across the table. My simple offer evolved within minutes into a full-scale, all-expenses-paid family vacation to Florida for 11 people: my parents, Kevin, and his wife, and 3 children, Amanda and Tyler, and myself. "Max treating us all to a family reunion in the sunshine," my father announced, raising his glass. "To the computer whiz, who finally found a practical use for all that screen time." Everyone laughed, and I forced myself to smile along, telling myself that bringing joy to my family was worth both the considerable expense and the continued jokes at my expense. The vacation cost me just over $30,000, but seeing my parents relaxed and happy on the beach seemed priceless at the time. What I didn't anticipate was that this would establish a new tradition. The Florida trip was deemed such a success that planning began almost immediately for the next year's family vacation. Without explicitly discussing it, everyone assumed I would continue to foot the bill for these increasingly elaborate family excursions. "The Caribbean would be amazing for next year," Amanda mused as we flew home from Florida. "Tyler's studying about coral reefs in science class." The Caribbean trip for 13 people, now including Amanda's new boyfriend, cost $48,000. The European tour the following year for my parents' anniversary exceeded $70,000. My sister's destination wedding in Hawaii, which I not only paid for but also coordinated much of the planning while she criticized my choices, approached 6 figures. Each trip followed the same pattern. I would arrange and pay for everything from flights to accommodations to meals. During the vacation, I would be simultaneously included as a member of the family and excluded as the butt of ongoing jokes. "Make sure Mac doesn't burn on the beach. Computers melt in the sun." "Don't let Mac near the ocean with his phone. He might try to program the fish." "Look at Mac, actually enjoying himself. Must be Wi-Fi at this resort." After each trip, there would be a flurry of social media posts, thanking me generically for making it possible before the gratitude faded and planning began for the next, more extravagant adventure. Meanwhile, my own achievements continued to be overlooked. When my side project, a security app I'd been developing in my limited free time, began gaining traction and industry recognition, I excitedly shared the news during a family dinner. "That's great, honey," my mother said, with a distracted smile before turning to Kevin. "Now tell everyone about Brittany's dance recital." I stopped sharing my professional accomplishments after that. When I was promoted to Vice President of Security Solutions, overseeing a department of 75 people and managing a budget of millions, I told no one in my family. When my photo appeared in a technology magazine featuring rising stars in the industry, I didn't mention it. The less I shared, the less opportunity they had to diminish my achievements. Yet I continued to fund their lifestyles, pay for their emergencies, and finance their vacations, clinging to the increasingly faint hope that someday, somehow, they would see me as more than their personal bank account, more than the family joke. The financial demands escalated with each passing year. What began as occasional assistance had morphed into an expectation of unlimited support. My calendar became cluttered with payment deadlines for family obligations. Tyler's tuition due on the 1st of each month, my parents' supplemental income on the 5th, Kevin's mortgage on the 15th, and various other recurring commitments scattered throughout. Meanwhile, my startup security app, SecureShield, was gaining significant attention in the tech community. I'd bootstrapped the development with my own savings and countless late nights coding after my day job. Tech blogs were featuring it, and user numbers were growing exponentially. I began receiving acquisition inquiries from major companies, including my own employer. During this professionally exciting time, the family financial burden grew increasingly suffocating. Amanda called one evening while I was in the middle of a crucial development session. Tyler made the travel soccer team, she announced without preamble. That's great, I replied, attempting to sound enthusiastic while trying to fix a critical bug in my code. They travel all over the state for tournaments. Some are even out of state. The coach says he has real potential, maybe even college scholarship potential. I knew what was coming before she even asked. The pregnant pause, the slight throat clearing. The team fees are pretty substantial, though. $4,000 per season plus travel expenses, with the divorce settlement still tied up. I agreed to cover it, of course. What choice did I have? Tyler was my nephew, and supporting his opportunities seemed like the right thing to do. But the request came without acknowledgement of the tuition I was already paying, or the various other expenses I'd covered for them over the years. Kevin's financial needs expanded as well. His oldest son, Jackson, was approaching college age, and suddenly there were campus visits to finance application fees to cover and discussions about tuition. His middle child needed braces. His youngest had been identified as gifted and would benefit from specialized enrichment programs. Each need was presented as urgent and essential. The extended family had now fully incorporated me into their financial planning as well. Cousin Patrick's landscaping business needed a new truck. Aunt Cheryl's roof was leaking. Uncle William's son was getting married and couldn't possibly have a modest wedding when Amanda's had been so lavish. During this period, my parents decided their 30-year-old kitchen needed renovation. We've always dreamed of granite countertops, my mother explained over the phone. And now that we entertain the bridge club regularly, it's really become necessary. The estimate they forwarded to me totaled $48,000, a complete gut renovation with high-end appliances and custom cabinetry. I transferred the money without comment, adding it to the mental ledger I'd stopped actively tallying years ago. Family gatherings had become exercises in endurance. Each holiday, birthday, or celebration featured the same routine initial greetings, followed by subtle and not-so-subtle references to my financial contributions, interspersed with jokes about my profession and personality. "Here comes the human ATM," Kevin would announce, as I arrived. "Don't spill wine on Mac, he might short-circuit, and then, how would we pay for Christmas?" Amanda would add. "Remember when we worried about him spending too much time on computers?" my mother would reminisce to whoever would listen. Who knew being a computer nerd would be so profitable? Not that we understand what he actually does all day. My father's contributions were perhaps the most cutting. 32 years old, and still single, he'd announced to the room. Too busy making money to make a family. All that success doesn't keep you warm at night, son. The truth was, I had dated occasionally, but found it difficult to trust potential partners' motives. After a particularly painful breakup with a woman who had accidentally left brochures for luxury resorts around my apartment and frequently mentioned her student loan debt, I'd become wary of romantic entanglements. The cruise to celebrate my parents' 40th anniversary marked a new high in family financial expectations. What began as a suggestion for a modest Caribbean sailing evolved into a 15-person, 2-week Mediterranean excursion on a luxury liner complete with premium drink packages, exclusive excursions, and first-class airfare to the departure port. "We only celebrate 40 years," once my mother said when I expressed mild concern about the growing expense. "And you're doing so well. It's not like you have a family to spend your money on." The final bill exceeded $100,000 more than my first year's salary out of college. As I authorized the payment, I wondered what my family would do if I suddenly lost my job or faced my own financial crisis. The thought was chilling. I realized no one had ever asked about my financial goals, my retirement plans, or whether these expenditures were sustainable for me. During the cruise, I received an email that would change everything. A major tech security firm wanted to acquire SecureShield for $28 million. They appreciated my innovative approach to consumer security and wanted me to head a new division focused on similar products. I sat on my stateroom balcony watching the Mediterranean sunset and contemplating what this would mean: financial independence beyond anything I'd imagined, recognition for work I'd done entirely on my own, a leadership role based purely on merit. At dinner that evening, bursting with my news, I attempted to share it with my family. I have some exciting development with my side project. I began during a rare lull in conversation. Side project, my father interrupted. You mean you do extra computer stuff on top of your regular computer stuff? The table erupted in laughter. No wonder you're still single, Kevin added, nudging my shoulder. When's the last time you even saw sunlight? Speaking of side projects, Amanda interjected, completely talking over me. Tyler's art teacher says he shows real promise. She's recommended a special summer program in New York. It's quite selective and somewhat expensive, but... And just like that, my moment was gone, replaced by a discussion of Tyler's artistic future and how I might facilitate it financially. I excused myself early, returning to my stateroom where I finalized the acquisition details alone without a single family member knowing or caring about this life-changing achievement. The next morning, my mother cornered me at the breakfast buffet. We've been thinking about next summer. She began piling pastries onto her plate. Your father has always wanted to see Australia and New Zealand. For his 65th birthday, wouldn't that be a wonderful gift from all of us? By all of us, she meant me. The planning had already begun for the next extravagant trip I would finance, before the current one had even concluded. I'll think about it, I replied non-committally, a response so out of character that my mother actually stopped and looked at me with surprise. Is everything okay? You seem distracted this trip. Just some work things on my mind, I said, the understatement of my life. Well, try to relax. That's what vacations are for. All that computer stress can't be good for you. As the cruise continued, I found myself increasingly withdrawn, observing my family dynamics as if from a distance. The constant jokes at my expense, the casual dismissal of my interests and achievements, the endless financial expectations, coupled with minimal gratitude. The pattern was clear, consistent, and unlikely to ever change, unless I changed it. By the time we docked at the final port, I had made my decision. The acquisition would remain my secret. My new wealth would remain my secret. And for the first time in my adult life, I would prioritize my own well-being over my family's expectations. Thanksgiving arrived 3 months after the Mediterranean cruise. The acquisition of SecureShield had been finalized, transforming my bank account and professional standing overnight. I'd negotiated a leadership position at the acquiring company with significant autonomy and an even more substantial salary on top of the acquisition payment. None of my family knew. I continued making their expected payments, maintaining the status quo while secretly planning my exit strategy from their financial dependence. The weather turned bitter cold that Thanksgiving morning. Snow flurries danced in the gray Michigan sky as I drove to my parents' house, rehearsing the boundaries I planned to establish during the holiday weekend. Nothing dramatic, just a gentle conversation about scaling back some of the financial support and being more mindful about vacation planning. I arrived late, delayed by a video conference with international team members that couldn't be rescheduled. The house was warm and fragrant with traditional holiday scents: roasting turkey, pumpkin pie, and cinnamon. Laughter echoed from the dining room as I hung my coat in the entryway. Finally decided to join us, Kevin called out as I entered. We were about to send a search party to that fancy office of yours. Sorry I'm late, I apologized, kissing my mother's cheek. Work call ran long. On Thanksgiving, my father scoffed, barely looking up from carving the turkey. Whatever happened to holidays being sacred family time? I bit back a retort about sacred family time being funded by my profane work hours and took my seat at the table, the same spot I'd occupied since childhood, at the far end, slightly removed from the central family cluster. Dinner progressed with the usual dynamics. Kevin dominated the conversation with stories about his coaching triumphs. Amanda shared Tyler's latest achievements in exhaustive detail. My parents beamed at their grandchildren and peppered their conversation with reminiscences about the good old days before computers dominated society. I ate quietly, waiting for an appropriate moment to join the conversation. It never seemed to arrive. Questions directed my way were perfunctory, and rarely required more than one-word answers. Still working too much. Business good. Seeing anyone special yet? As dessert was served, my father tapped his glass with a spoon, drawing everyone's attention. Since we're all together, I think this is a good time to discuss next summer's trip. Your mother and I have been doing some research on Australia and New Zealand. My stomach tightened. Here it came, the next financial expectation being laid at my feet, before I'd even had a chance to establish new boundaries. We're thinking 3 weeks minimum, my mother added enthusiastically. There's just so much to see. And with the grandkids getting older, these family experiences become even more precious. My father nodded. I've already looked into some tour packages. For our group size, we're probably looking at around $150,000, give or take. But it's the trip of a lifetime, right? The casual way he mentioned spending $150,000 of my money without prior discussion made something shift inside me. I placed my fork down carefully. That's a significant expense, I said quietly. Well, obviously we'd keep costs down where possible, my mother interjected, misinterpreting my concern. But with airfare for everyone, and accommodations for 3 weeks. Plus, we'd want to do the major excursions, Kevin added, already scrolling through his phone. Great Barrier Reef, Sydney Opera House, those Lord of the Rings movie locations in New Zealand. The kids would love that. And we'd need to go during summer break. When Tyler's not in school, Amanda chimed in. Those are peak season rates, unfortunately. They continued planning my financial commitment, as if I wasn't in the room debating destinations, accommodations, and activities, while I sat in stunned silence. I was actually hoping to discuss. I began only to be interrupted by my nephew, asking about seeing kangaroos and koalas. The conversation veered into a detailed discussion of Australian wildlife. Another attempt to speak was derailed by debate over whether a side trip to Fiji would be excessive. It's just a hop from New Zealand, my father reasoned. Seems silly to be that close and not experience it. My mother nodded enthusiastically. And we could do one of those overwater bungalow resorts for a few days. I've always dreamed of staying in one of those. Guys, I need to. I tried again. Oh, before I forget, Amanda interrupted. Tyler's private school is raising tuition next year by 15%. Apparently, they're building a new performing arts center. It's going to be amazing for his development, but I wanted to give you a heads up since you're handling the payments. That was it. No question about whether I could or would continue paying. No acknowledgement of the existing financial burden. Just a casual notification of an increased expense I was expected to absorb without comment. I sat back in my chair, suddenly seeing the situation with painful clarity. I wasn't a family member to these people. I was a resource to be tapped, an ATM with legs expected to fund their dreams, while mine remained unacknowledged. I closed a major deal today, I said abruptly, loud enough to cut through the vacation planning chatter. That's why I was late. I was finalizing the details of a project I've been working on for years. The table fell quiet, more from surprise at my forceful tone than interest in my announcement. Oh, my mother said, visibly searching for an appropriate response to this unexpected assertion. That's nice, dear. What kind of deal? My father asked, his tone suggesting he was humoring me rather than genuinely interested. My security application was acquired by IntegraShield. I'll be heading a new division focused on consumer security products. I didn't mention the $28 million figure or my new net worth. Well, look at that, Kevin said with a chuckle. The computer nerd makes good again. Is this going to mean another fancy title on your business card? It's a significant achievement, I pressed. Something I've worked toward for years. We're very proud of you, honey, my mother said, with the same tone she'd used when I'd show her elementary school art projects. Now, about Australia. $28 million, I stated flatly, abandoning my plan to keep the figure private. That's what the acquisition was worth. That got their attention. Forks paused midway to mouths. Eyes widened. A moment of stunned silence fell over the table. 28 million, my father repeated, as if testing whether the words made sense together. Yes. You're, joking Amanda said, her voice uncertain. I'm not. Holy shit, Kevin exclaimed. Why didn't you lead with that? This changes everything. Indeed it did, but not in the way they were thinking. I could see the calculations happening behind their eyes, the mental readjustment of what might now be possible with access to this level of wealth. Australia might just be the beginning, my father said, recovering quickly. We could do a world tour, multiple continents, first class, all the way. Tyler could go to any college he wants. Amanda murmured almost to herself. Maybe even overseas. I could finally start that sports training facility I've always talked about. Kevin added excitement building in his voice. They began talking over each other, their dreams expanding in real time to accommodate my new financial reality, all without asking a single question about what this meant for me, what I planned to do with my success, or how I felt about achieving this milestone. My father raised his glass to Mac and his computer genius. Who would have thought all those hours playing on screens would turn into something so profitable? He laughed heartily at his own joke. You've always been the family joke, but I guess the joke paid off after all. The table erupted in laughter. Even my mother, who occasionally defended me from the harshest teasing, joined in. Remember when we worried he'd never amount to anything because he wouldn't go outside, she added between giggles. Something inside me broke. All the years of dismissal, all the financial exploitation disguised as family, need all the jokes at my expense while I funded their lifestyles. It crystallized in that moment into perfect, excruciating clarity. I placed my napkin on the table and stood up. Mac, what's wrong? My mother asked, noticing my expression. I have to go, I said quietly. Go? We haven't even had coffee yet, my father protested. And we need to start seriously planning this Australia trip now that we know the budget constraints are, well, less constraining. There is no Australia trip, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion building inside me. Not one that I'm paying for anyway. What are you talking about? Amanda asked, frowning. Of course their island. We've been planning it for months. No, you've been planning how to spend my money for months, I corrected her. There's a difference. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Honey, are you feeling all right? My mother asked, concern, finally registering on her face. You seem upset. I'm not upset, I replied. I'm just seeing things clearly for the first time. Dad's right. I've always been the family joke. And that's fine. But I'm not going to bankroll the people who can't see me as anything more than a punchline. Oh, come on, Kevin scoffed. We're just having a little fun. You know we appreciate everything you do for the family. Do I know that? When was the last time any of you asked about my work without turning it into a joke? When was the last time you showed interest in my life beyond what I could provide financially? When was the last time any of you saw me as Mac, your son and brother, instead of Mac, the walking ATM? That's not fair, my father bristled. We're family. Family supports each other. Support goes both ways, Dad. And it's not just financial. It's emotional, too. It's respect. It's acknowledgement. It's seeing someone for who they are, not what they can give you. I think you're overreacting, Amanda said dismissively. We're just excited about your news and what it means for all of us. That's exactly the problem, I said, grabbing my coat. My achievement isn't about all of us. It's about me, my work, my effort. But you can't even see that. Where are you going? My mother called as I headed for the door. It's Thanksgiving. I have a work emergency, I lied, using the excuse they'd heard countless times before. I'll call you later. I didn't call later. I drove straight to my modest home, packed an overnight bag, and checked into a hotel where I spent the remainder of the holiday weekend in blessed solitude, making plans for a future that for the first time would prioritize my happiness over my family's expectations. The weeks following Thanksgiving passed in a blur of activity. I threw myself into my new position at IntegraShield while simultaneously orchestrating a complete life transformation behind the scenes. The acquisition money sat in my account untouched, except for one significant expenditure, a sprawling estate in an exclusive neighborhood 30 miles from my current home. The property was everything I'd never allowed myself to want. 7 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, a home theater, swimming pool, tennis court, and breathtaking ocean views from multiple terraces. At $15 million, it represented a significant investment, but one that felt symbolic of my new commitment to self-worth. I worked with an interior designer under strict confidentiality, creating spaces that reflected my personality and interests, rather than the utilitarian aesthetic I'd maintained in my modest home. The massive library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves fulfilled a childhood dream. The state-of-the-art home office featured the most advanced technology available. The game room included both video game setups and traditional board games I'd always enjoyed but rarely had people to play with. Throughout this process, I maintained my regular financial contributions to my family. The tuition payments continued. The mortgage assistance didn't falter. The monthly deposits to my parents remained consistent. I made no mention of Thanksgiving's confrontation, and interestingly, neither did they. Our limited communications returned to surface-level pleasantries, with their requests for financial assistance becoming somewhat more hesitant but no less frequent. Christmas approached, and with it came the expected invitation to my parents' home. I declined politely, citing work commitments with the transition to my new position. The disappointed protests seemed more concerned with the presents I wouldn't be bringing than my absence from the gathering. "We'll miss you, honey," my mother said over the phone. "Will you still be sending the usual Christmas checks for the grandkids? They look forward to them every year." "Actually, I've already arranged something different this year," I replied. I had indeed sent generous gift cards directly to each of my nieces and nephews, with personal notes bypassing their parents as intermediaries for the first time. "Oh," she said, clearly caught off guard. "Well, that's thoughtful." January arrived, bringing with it the coldest Michigan winter in decades. As temperatures plunged below zero, my father called with news that their furnace had failed. "The replacement cost is astronomical," he explained, the expectation clear in his voice. "With this weather, we can't wait to save up for it." "I understand," I said. "Let me know the cost, and I'll help out." I did help, but instead of simply transferring the full amount as I would have in the past, I covered half, suggesting they use some of their savings for the remainder. The confused silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. February brought Amanda's call about summer camp deposits for Tyler. March delivered Kevin's request for help with property taxes. April saw my parents hinting about anniversary gifts. Each time I provided partial assistance, rather than covering costs entirely, establishing a new pattern without explicit discussion. Throughout this gradual financial withdrawal, I continued preparing my new home in secret. By early May, the mansion was ready for occupancy. I moved in on a Wednesday evening with no announcement, no housewarming party, no social media posts documenting the transition. One day, I lived in my modest 3-bedroom house. The next, I awoke in a master suite larger than my previous living room. The freedom was intoxicating. For the first time in my adult life, I made decisions based solely on my preferences, without calculating the impact on my ability to support my family. I joined a tennis club in my new neighborhood. I hired a personal chef to come 3 times weekly. I bought artwork that spoke to me rather than the generic prints that had adorned my previous walls. Most importantly, I began building genuine relationships. My neighbors, successful professionals who valued me for my conversation and character, rather than my checkbook, became friends. I hosted small dinner parties where conversations ranged from literature to travel to philosophy, with not a single joke about computers or my profession. Richard and Diana, a couple in their 40s who lived 2 estates down, became particularly close friends. Both accomplished in their own fields, he a surgeon, she an architect. They appreciated my success without defining me by it. "What I find fascinating about your security application," Richard said during one dinner at their home, "is how you balanced user-friendliness with robust protection. Most developers sacrifice one for the other." It was perhaps the first time someone had discussed my work with genuine interest and understanding, without reducing it to computer stuff or making it the punchline of a joke. Meanwhile, my interactions with my family became increasingly distant. I stopped initiating contact, responding to their calls and messages, but never reaching out first. When financial requests came, and they still came regularly, I would offer partial assistance, or sometimes gentle refusals. "I'm afraid I can't help with that right now" became a phrase I practiced and delivered with increasing confidence. The reactions ranged from confusion to hurt to thinly veiled anger. "Is everything okay with your job?" my mother asked after I declined to fund a spring break trip for Kevin's family. "You seem different lately." "Everything's fine," I assured her, "just being more mindful about my spending." The first missed payment, Tyler's tuition for the fall semester, triggered a flurry of increasingly panicked calls from Amanda. "There must be some mistake," she insisted, when I explained I would no longer be covering the cost. "Tyler's counting on this. The school is expecting the payment. You can't just stop without warning." "I'm giving you warning now," I said calmly. 3 months before the payment is due. That should be enough time to make alternative arrangements." "Alternative arrangements? Like what? I can't afford $30,000 a year for tuition." "Perhaps a public school would be appropriate," I suggested, "or scholarship applications, or asking his father to contribute." "I can't believe you're doing this," she said, her voice breaking. "After everything we've been through as a family." The guilt trip might have worked 6 months earlier. Now it merely confirmed I was making the right decision. Similar conversations followed with Kevin about mortgage assistance and my parents about their monthly supplements. Each expressed disbelief that I would abandon them financially. Each attempted to leverage family loyalty to maintain the status quo, and each eventually realized with varying degrees of acceptance that the dynamic had permanently changed. In July, 6 months after my acquisition windfall, and 2 months after moving into my new home, I officially sold my previous house. The sale made local news given the hot real estate market and the significant profit margin. I hadn't considered that this public transaction would alert my family to my changed circumstances. The call from my father came the same evening the sale was finalized. "You sold your house?" he asked, without preamble when I answered. "Yes," I confirmed simply. "Where are you living?" "I've moved." "Moved where?" "To a new place." "Don't be cute, Mac. Where are you living now?" "Dad, I appreciate your concern, but my living arrangements are my business." The stunned silence that followed suggested this concept had never occurred to him. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that you don't think your own parents deserve to know where you live." "I'm telling you that I'm a 32-year-old adult who doesn't need to report his housing decisions to anyone." The conversation devolved quickly after that ending with my father's incredulous statement, "I don't even recognize you anymore." Perhaps I thought after hanging up that was precisely the point. The old Mac, eager to please, desperate for approval, willing to buy affection, had been replaced by someone with self-respect and boundaries. Of course they didn't recognize me. I barely recognized myself, but I certainly liked this version better. The detective work began almost immediately. Family members called mutual acquaintances. Social media was scoured for clues. My assistant at work reported that my mother had called the office 3 times, trying to get my new address for an urgent family matter. I maintained my privacy, instructing friends and colleagues not to share my contact information. I continued my new life, enjoying the freedom of genuine relationships and self-directed choices. For the first time, I spent money on experiences that brought me joy, rather than approval: cooking classes, sailing lessons, a 2-week photography tour of Iceland that I'd always wanted to take but could never justify while supporting my family's expenses. August arrived, bringing with it the annual family vacation I had historically funded. No trip had been planned this year, given my financial withdrawal, a reality that apparently hadn't fully registered until the traditional vacation time approached. "We were thinking," my mother began during a rare phone call I actually answered, "that maybe we should all get together soon. Nothing extravagant. Maybe just a weekend at the lake house we used to rent when you were kids. For old time's sake." "That sounds nice," I said sincerely. "Let me know the details if you decide to do it." "Well," she hedged, "we were hoping you might organize it, since you've always been so good at handling the arrangements." "I'm afraid I can't this time," I replied. "My schedule is quite full with the new position." The disappointment in her voice was palpable, but I remained firm. The family didn't rent the lake house that summer. No alternative gathering was organized. The tradition of the annual family vacation, it seemed, had ended with my financial support. By September, almost a year after the fateful Thanksgiving dinner, my life had transformed completely. My new home felt truly mine. My social circle consisted of people who valued me for myself. My work continued to challenge and fulfill me, and though the distance from my family created an occasional pang of sadness, the freedom from their expectations and dismissal outweighed any regret. I had just returned from a morning tennis match with Richard when my security system alerted me to visitors at the gate. The camera showed a cluster of familiar faces: my parents, Kevin, and his wife, Amanda, and Tyler, all standing expectantly at the entrance to my private drive. The family had finally found me. I stood in my spacious foyer watching the security monitor as my family huddled outside the gate. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to indignation to outright shock as they took in the scale of the estate from their limited vantage point. My finger hovered over the intercom button. Part of me wanted to ignore them to continue the separation I'd carefully constructed over the past year. Another part recognized that this confrontation was inevitable and perhaps necessary for true resolution. I pressed the button. "Hello," I said simply, my voice carrying through the speaker at the gate. Their heads snapped toward the sound eyes, searching for cameras they couldn't see. "Mac," my father called out uncertainly. "Is that you?" "Yes." "What? What is this place?" my mother asked her, voice wavering between awe and confusion. "This is my home," I replied. A moment of stunned silence followed. "Your home," Kevin repeated incredulously. "Since when?" "Since May." May, Amanda's voice rose sharply. "You've been living here since May and never told any of us." "That's correct." They exchanged bewildered glances, clearly struggling to process this information. "Can we come in?" my mother finally asked. "We've been so worried about you. You've been so distant, and then when we found out you'd sold your house." I considered the request. This was the moment of truth, the physical boundary that represented all the emotional boundaries I'd established over the past year. "No," I said firmly. "I don't think that's a good idea right now." "What do you mean?" "No," my father demanded, his confusion shifting to anger. "We drove all the way out here. We're your family. Being family doesn't entitle you to access every part of my life, especially without invitation." "This is ridiculous," Kevin scoffed. "Just open the gate, Mac. We need to talk." "We can talk like this," I insisted. "Or we can schedule a time to meet elsewhere. But I'm not comfortable having you in my home today." "Not comfortable," Amanda repeated, her tone incredulous. "With your own family, the people who raised you and supported you." The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. "When exactly did you support me, Amanda? Was it when you accepted tens of thousands of dollars for Tyler's education without a single thank you? Or when you dismissed every professional achievement I ever shared with you?" "That's not fair," she protested weakly. "Isn't it? For years I funded your lifestyles, covered your emergencies, paid for lavish vacations, all while being the butt of your jokes, having my career dismissed as playing with computers, and being treated as nothing more than a convenient source of cash." "We never treated you like that," my mother insisted, though her eyes didn't meet the camera. "You know you did," I countered. "Every one of you. And I allowed it because I desperately wanted your approval and acceptance. I thought, if I just gave enough eventually, you'd really see me as someone worthy of respect." "So this is what revenge," my father asked, gesturing at the gates. "Living in a mansion without telling us, cutting us off financially, making us hunt you down like detectives. This isn't revenge, Dad. It's self-respect. It's creating a life where I'm valued for who I am, not what I can provide. It's surrounding myself with people who don't make me the punchline of every conversation." Tyler, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. "Uncle Mac, are you ever coming back to family dinners? I miss your stories about computers." His innocent question pierced through my defenses. Of all my family members, Tyler had shown the most genuine interest in my work, occasionally asking questions about programming or showing me games he enjoyed. "I don't know, buddy," I answered honestly. "Maybe someday, but things need to change first." "What things?" my mother asked, her voice softer now. "Everything. The way you see me, the way you talk about me, the way you expect financial support without gratitude or reciprocity, the jokes, the dismissal, the lack of respect for my achievements and interests. We respect you, my father insisted. Do you? When was the last time you asked about my work without turning it into a joke? When was the last time you celebrated one of my accomplishments with the same enthusiasm you show for Kevin's coaching wins or Amanda's teaching awards? When was the last time you saw me as Mac your son, not Mac the ATM? Their silence was telling. That's what I thought, I continued. At Thanksgiving, when I shared news of my $28 million acquisition, the culmination of years of work, your first thoughts were about how my success could benefit you. More extravagant vacations, college funds, business ventures. Not one of you asked what this meant for me or expressed genuine pride in what I'd accomplished. We were proud, my mother protested weakly. Were you? Because what I heard was Dad saying, "You've always been the family joke, but I guess the joke paid off after all." That's not pride, Mom. That's seeing my success as surprising and amusing because you never actually believed in me. My father shifted uncomfortably. It was just a joke, Mac. You're being oversensitive. No, Dad. I'm finally being appropriately sensitive. All those jokes were actually microaggressions that undermined my worth, and I'm done accepting them as the price of family inclusion. So what now? Kevin asked. You live in your mansion and pretend you don't have a family. Is that the plan? My plan is to live a life where I'm respected and valued, where my generosity is appreciated rather than expected, where my achievements are celebrated rather than diminished. If that includes my family, I'm open to it, but it has to be on new terms. And what are these terms? My father asked, his tone suggesting he found the very concept offensive. First, no more financial dependence. I'll help in true emergencies, but the regular support stops permanently. Second, no more jokes at my expense. My career, my interests, my choices, all off limits for mockery. Third, genuine interest in my life and accomplishments. Real conversations where you actually listen rather than waiting for your turn to speak. You make us sound terrible, Amanda said, her eyes welling with tears. Not terrible. Just comfortable in a dynamic that was slowly destroying me. I needed to break that dynamic to save myself. A long silence followed as they absorbed my words. I could see the range of emotions crossing their faces: defensiveness, hurt, confusion, and finally, for some of them at least, the beginning of understanding. Can I see your house sometime? Tyler asked, breaking the tension. I bet you have cool computer stuff. I smiled despite myself. Maybe someday, Tyler, when things are better between all of us. I'd like that, he said simply. My mother stepped forward. Mac, I had no idea you felt this way. All this time we thought. You thought I was happy being the family joke as long as you included me in gatherings I finished for her. But inclusion without respect isn't belonging. It's just presence. We do respect you, she insisted, but with less certainty now. We love you. I believe you love me, I conceded. But love without respect is incomplete. And showing respect means seeing someone for who they are, not who you want them to be or what they can do for you. My father, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. So that's it. Then stay out of my life, unless we meet your demands. I recognized his attempt to paint me as the villain, to flip the script so that my boundaries became unreasonable ultimatums. In the past, I might have backpedaled, apologized, tried to smooth things over. Not anymore. They're not demands, Dad. They're boundaries. And yes, if you can't respect them, then I need you to stay out of my life. Not because I want that outcome, but because I value myself too much to accept anything less. He stared at me through the camera, his expression unreadable. Then he turned and walked back to the car without another word. My mother hesitated, torn between following him and continuing the conversation. Give him time, I suggested gently. This is a big adjustment for all of us. She nodded, then said softly, I am proud of you, Mac. Maybe I haven't shown it right, but I am. Thank you, I replied, surprised by how much those simple words affected me. That means a lot. The family eventually departed, leaving me alone in my spacious foyer, emotionally drained but strangely peaceful. The confrontation I'd feared for months had happened, and I'd maintained my boundaries without cruelty or compromise. The weeks that followed brought cautious attempts at reconnection. My mother called regularly, making visible efforts to ask about my work and listen to my responses without interjecting jokes or changing the subject. Kevin sent an awkwardly worded but seemingly sincere email, acknowledging that he'd taken my financial support for granted and apologizing for the years of teasing. Amanda remained more distant, her pride apparently wounded by my refusal to continue funding Tyler's education, though Tyler himself sent endearing messages about his new public school and coding club. My father took longest to respond. 6 weeks after the confrontation at my gate, he called. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began without preamble, "about respect and jokes and all that." And I prompted when he fell silent. "And I still think you're being too sensitive," he said, causing my heart to sink. But then he continued, "But that doesn't mean your feelings aren't valid. If my jokes hurt you, then they weren't good jokes, and I'm sorry for that." Coming from my father, a man who rarely apologized for anything, this was significant. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot. Your mother wants to have dinner. Neutral territory. Just the four of us, you, me, her, and whoever you want to bring. If you want to bring someone." The invitation was awkward but genuine, a first step. I'd like that, I agreed. "Let's start small and see where it goes." That dinner led to another, and then a family gathering at a restaurant for my birthday, the first where my achievements were celebrated rather than diminished. I allowed Tyler to visit the mansion first, his wide-eyed excitement at my home theater and gaming setup a genuine pleasure to witness. Later, I invited my parents and siblings for a carefully orchestrated afternoon that established both my new reality and the boundaries I intended to maintain. Healing wasn't linear or complete. Old patterns occasionally resurfaced, requiring gentle but firm correction. Financial expectations had to be repeatedly addressed as family members tested whether my resolve would weaken over time. But slowly a new dynamic emerged, one based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. Perhaps most surprisingly, my relationship with my younger cousin Jordan flourished during this period. At 22, he shared my interest in technology and faced similar dismissal from the extended family. Recognizing myself in his struggle for validation, I became the mentor I'd never had, offering guidance, encouragement, and occasional financial support for educational opportunities. "How did you stop caring what they think?" he asked during one of our regular coffee meetings. "I didn't stop caring," I explained. "I just started caring about my own opinion of myself more. And I realized that true connection can't exist without mutual respect." "I'm trying to learn that," he admitted. "It's hard when your whole life you've been told that family acceptance is everything." "Family is important," I agreed. "But so is being true to yourself. The people who truly love you will eventually see your authentic self, even if it takes them time to adjust their expectations." 18 months after the confrontation at my gate, my family gathered at my home for Thanksgiving, a symbolically important choice of holiday. The dynamic was noticeably different. Conversations flowed more equitably. My professional insights were sought rather than dismissed. No jokes were made at my expense. Was it perfect number? Did underlying tensions still occasionally surface? Yes, but as I looked around my dining table at the family I distanced myself from, and then cautiously welcomed back on new terms, I recognized the profound truth that had guided my transformation. You teach people how to treat you through what you accept, what you refuse, and what you value in yourself. My journey from family joke to respected individual wasn't about wealth or mansions or financial independence, though those had been catalysts. It was about the fundamental human need for dignity and the courage to demand it even from those we love most. That night, after everyone had left and I stood alone on my terrace, overlooking the ocean, I felt a sense of peace I'd never known before. The path to self-respect had been painful and lonely at times, but standing on the other side, I knew without doubt it had been worth every difficult step. If my story resonates with you, I hope it gives you courage to examine your own relationships and ask whether they honor your worth. Remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic connection. Have you ever had to create distance from loved ones to protect your self-respect? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. If this story helped you, please hit the like button, subscribe to see more stories about finding your worth, and share with someone who might need to hear this message. Thank you for listening, and remember, your value isn't determined by what you provide others, but by the truth you know about yourself.